it could have been much more satisfying if there was any recognition as to why this performative activism was even necessary, other than living in a patriarchy. Like, I think the thing I agree with the most is that there was no address of capitalism and of the problems of capitalism. It was this huge loophole that was just completely left out of the movie. Welcome to the Whorrific Podcast, a witchcraft and sex work centered discussion on transforming the systems we hold inside ourselves. My name is Morgan Le Fay, and I have years of experience as a psychic medium, business consultant, and sex worker. Ready to begin? Hello, Whorrifics. Welcome to the Pink Capitalism Barbie episode of the Whorrific Podcast with me, your host, Morgan Le Fay. It's been a few weeks since I've talked to you, and one cool thing about this episode is that I've decided to record it as a video as well as an audio podcast. I just find myself drawn to it. I've done it a few times in the past, having a video as well as a audio podcast, and it is a bit more work, but I have my streaming set up, so like my background, my outfits, my hair, my mic, my camera, and everything, like very up and up. I have it very well designed right now because I've been doing a ton of camming. I think that it's like, right now at least, very much my preferred way to make money and income and to clock in hours every single week to try to create consistent income for myself. My favorite site to use is streamate. I highly recommend it if you are interested in camming. I thought, why not give the girls and the gays, something fun to look at if they would so like to choose to do that. And so I am also filming this on video. If you're watching on video, hi. If you're listening on audio, I will do my best to keep you as included as possible by giving audio descriptions of anything I show. I'm going to be discussing today the Barbie movie. I have had a request to share my review of it, partially because they think that I have good taste or good ways of describing and understanding and reading media. Also partially because I'm one of the world's biggest Barbie fans. This is a fandom that I have been part of since I gained consciousness. You know how like some kids like see trucks and get really excited, some kids see dogs and get really excited, some kids see a bouncy ball and get like, that's their thing. My thing was beautiful, stunning women. That was my hyperfixation as a child. To where my mom actually told me that she had to like scan any public place for beautiful, stunning, gorgeous women because she knew that I would want to go over to them and say hi to them, just like how a mom might scan for trucks if their kid is easily excited for trucks, right? So Barbie really appealed to me for whatever reason. I have just always been obsessed with femme presentation, princess, girly stuff, pink, sparkles, rainbows, fairies, everything that you could see in the Barbie aisle is appealing to me and has been appealing to me my whole life. I actually wrote my college essay on Barbie's influence on me throughout my adolescence, because I think I also was really, really compelled, not just by the aesthetics, although I do think that the aesthetics are exactly what first drew me into Barbie. But as I started to learn more about pretend play and fantasy, it really opened up my, not exclusively, but I think Barbie is part of what opened up and facilitated my personal interest in identity exploration, in role-playing, in dressing up, and in using all of those different elements to tell a story about who you are in that moment and what you came here to do, letting all of the details come together. And so in that way, it's very theatrical, which goes back into the type of career work that I've really been enjoying doing lately, which is camwork. That's very theatrical. It involves makeup, lights, cameras, outfits, sets, which are some of my favorite parts about Barbie and the Barbie movie. And so that is sort of the entry point with which I would like to get into this conversation, because I do have basically a list of likes and dislikes about the Barbie movie that I want to discuss. But first, I just wanted to let you know, I am a fan. I have been a fan for a really long time. But I also want to acknowledge, as I'm saying that, what I really think Barbie is, as somebody who has been part of the fandom like my whole life, and that would be a commodity and also an icon. So similar to like McDonald's or Nike or American Girl doll, which is also owned by Mattel, even, Avengers, or like, what's that one movie a lot of people really like? The Nightmare Before Christmas. These are all fandoms, and the way that we interact tends to be with commodity, by purchasing or by representing that brand. And that's really where I, as a business owner and an anti-capitalist, get very interested in understanding sort of the difference between like the cultural phenomenon of Barbie and what it means, and what it's meant to me my whole life, and what it means to other people who experience Barbie in relationship to their gender. I really want to open it up and pull it out. Just what's the difference in between the cultural impact and the capital impact, right? Like, there is a lot to critique when it comes to any type of commodity, right? Any type of mass-produced commodification of anything. There's a lot to critique when it comes to marketing, when it comes to the actual manufacturing and production process, what type of environmental impact there is, what type of human impact there is. I don't know the specifics on Mattel. I haven't researched it, but I know that within capitalism, and certainly within Mattel's corporate structure, profits are priority. And that is kind of where I find there to be a disconnect between Barbie, the cultural icon, and Barbie, the product, the brand. But before I get into like my specific likes and dislikes, I wanted to share a tarot card that I pulled for this episode to just sort of ask Spirit to support me in understanding why I'm feeling called to commentate on this, like why I am feeling called to spend the time to sit down, record, edit, and share this episode, other than just being a Barbie fan, and I just want to know how it connects to my work as a psychic consultant and sex crafter. And what I pulled is the Three of Coins. I am censoring this image on the video because there is genitals in this card, but it's three people kind of all sitting together on a couch, holding one another. Very much threesome vibes. Very much polyamorous group sex vibes. This is your host, Morgan LaFay. I just wanted to ask you a few questions to see if I have the right understanding of who you are. I have a feeling that you deserve to feel seen and heard in this society that invisibilizes and silences us. I have a feeling you want clarity, healing, and acceptance about your past and your upbringing. I feel that you want permission to show up as the unconventional self that you sense deep down inside. And finally, I sense that you want to develop a relationship with the parts of you that are shadowy or taboo. Am I right? If so, I would love to invite you to book a psychic consultation with me. When you feel disappointed or confused, a psychic reading with me is what you need to feel clear, grounded, and connected to yourself and spirit once again. Using my 5+ years of training and experience in psychic mediumship, tarot, and astrology, I would love to guide you to your own truth with my gentle confidence. If that sounds like something that you'd like to explore, please use the code PODCAST to receive 25% off your first session with me. You can book a session by going to morganlefay.com or looking at the link in my bio. And remember to use code PODCAST for 25% off your first session with me. All right, gorgeous, back to the episode. Maybe Spirit is trying to speak to me in this way to say, like, what is it about aesthetic that brings us into relational awareness? What is it about the beauty and the glamour and the drama and the performance of gender and of gender expression that brings us into community with and into collaboration with one another, that brings us into that form of social dynamic that changes us? That's something that has been coming through a lot recently in my channeling and in my message making, is this idea that change happens between people or between oneself and oneself. If you look at internal family systems and parts work, change happens when we show up and we are intimate and we connect and we witness ourselves and others in our myriad disparate parts. And so there's something about Barbie that is iconic and classic that draws some sort of part that is not universal but very commonly reflected in lots and lots of different people, especially girls and women. And there is something extremely powerful about that. There's a reason that I dress up. I don't think you need to dress up, obviously, but for me, with the intro and the context that I've given you, there's a reason why I have makeup on, my hair's done, I'm wearing like a custom outfit that my sister helped me design. My bedroom looks perfect. The lighting is all done the way that it needs to be done, and that is because I want your attention. I want your specific attention. You specifically are the person whose attention I want. And I like to think that part of the reason that you came here to listen to me and to watch me, if you're watching, is because on some level you are interested in my aesthetic, right? Like, as a sex worker, I can say that I'm completely comfortable with, on some level, anyone being here because they find me attractive or aesthetically appealing or interesting. That's part of creating content, and I'm very, very okay with and into that. So that is like sort of what I'm also getting is, like, as I get into my likes and dislikes and my critiques about Barbie, I also want to talk about what we as sex crafters, witch crafters, people who are alternatively employed, self-employed, freelancers, content creators, artists, people who are using our physical image, our bodies, our faces to make money, right? What can we figure out from what Barbie did and apply in our own lives, but in a way where we're not mass producing plastic? As much as I have a Barbie collection, I also just wonder how many there needs to be and how much Mattel needs to sell and why. Why isn't it enough? Why don't we have enough Barbies yet, right? So that is what the Three of Pentacles is meaning to me. What can we learn from the success of Barbie, from the way that Barbie capitalized off of its presence as an aesthetic, cultural icon and feminine icon, like the image of beauty, the image of womanhood, stereotypically? which is a big part of the Barbie movie if you've seen it. So if you haven't seen it, I will probably be giving some spoilers, but I'm not going to be getting so much into like the plot and everything. I'm going to be talking more about overall themes and vibes that I pulled out of this. And I am going to kind of just go back and forth between my likes and my dislikes, and we'll see where that takes us. But then I want to wrap up by sharing what I think that we can gain from this behemoth of a brand that has just absolutely taken over so much of our collective consciousness. Excuse me, this summer. Which also happened to be my 30th birthday. So it just feels really personal to me. My birthday was like a few days before the Barbie movie came out. So I think one of the most broadly complimented things that the Barbie movie did was, as this piece of cinema, was bring back set design, bring back the way that set can be used, paint, structure, lighting, light changes, right? The way set can be used to create immersion, to create a world that we are drawn into, that we want to move into. And I think aesthetically, that is one of the things that they did really well, and that I think they really, the makers of the Barbie movie really did not disappoint on. I think one of the best things about Barbie, the product, Barbie the object, and the commodity, is the way that so many little details are boiled down and shrunk down into this touchable, holdable mini object where we can sort of live our dreams out on this small scale without having to fully commit to changing our entire lives, right? As children and as adults, this is why props and accessories are so useful for fantasy. This is why the idea of like dressing for the job that you want, or like presenting yourself to be the person who you want to be, is so powerful, because it's a way for us to explore our identities, to understand what we're drawn to, what feels powerful for us. You know, the glass, like the acrylic doors that Barbie's dream house was made up of, and the way that the closet and everything just created this immersive and magical otherworldly space, I think is really, really useful, not only to people who work in sex, but also people who work in magic. We know as witches that creating set and setting is such a useful tool when it comes to accessing and tapping into our subconscious, which is such a powerful place to pull from when it comes to your content, when it comes to your business choices. The unconscious is where we go to when we are connecting with spirit, when we're asking spirit for guidance, and small details can shift the way that we perceive reality. And that is so, so powerful. By dressing up this way, by having pink hair, like styled in such a fashion that it looks like it grows out of my head, these are time and effort that I'm putting into being the person who I see myself to be on the inside. This makeup, right? When I get ready to cam, and when I decided to make this podcast a video podcast, I knew that I was going to spend time and effort with my hair and with my makeup and with my outfit and cleaning my room and setting everything up, because that is part of what I want to project out onto the world. You know, I'm curvy, I'm thick, I like that about myself. I didn't always, and that's one of the issues that I think Barbie really has as a, you know, brand and as a commodity, is that it does create an unhealthy body image. Studies have shown that this is the case. I don't have those studies linked, but you could definitely research it yourself if you're curious about that. And I guess this could be my first dislike, is just like, maybe these are not just about the movie, but also about Barbie as a commodity. Like, the way that even these diverse images are still so within the beauty standard is, I guess for me, disappointing and frustrating, because although there are many other influences in my life that led me to have issues with my body image and the size and shape of my body, and it did take me a lot of time for me to understand that I'm beautiful fully, completely the way that I am without having to change it. I do think Barbie was one of those influences. Barbie serves as a role model. For me, it was a way to compare myself to the ideal woman. And I think even in the casting, ideal womanhood really was not thrown away in any way, shape, or form. I like that there was this tongue-in-cheek sort of meta self-referential way of describing Margot Robbie's character as stereotypical Barbie, because she is stereotypical Barbie. And also, there were not like really big fat women in that movie that I can remember. And I think if I did, I would, you know what I mean? Like, it was just this really, like, I don't know if whitewashed is the right word, but maybe pink washed would be the better word if we're talking about like pink capitalism. And pink washing is just this idea that, like, I guess, like, in the minds of the Barbie creators, I imagine they think you are allowed to have misogyny and conformity to unhealthy standards as long as you are performatively working against that by saying that you're being inclusive, or by like doing performative inclusive actions such as having a curvy Barbie, which I do own. I own curvy Barbie. I play with her. She's thick. She looks great. She's not fat. She has a flat stomach. Like, and I don't think Barbie has ever put out a doll that doesn't have a flat stomach. So that's just something, that I really find to be a miss when it comes to Barbie. Not only achieving the ethos that they sort of say that they stand for, but also when it comes to selling to a larger consumer base. Like, I don't think anything would be wrong for me or for Barbie if fat Barbies existed when I was a kid. And so I really have this concern about the way that Barbie is, as a company, Mattel, is really, really good and okay with reinforcing systems of oppression through their implied approval of it by the lack of diversity, by the lack of people present who don't fit that stereotype. And I get that that's like a joke because, like, oh, Barbies are perfect, but it's like, how are you going to make a joke about it, Mattel, if you are not actively working to change it by doing more than having like a curvy, slim, thick Barbie? Like, I want Barbie with like a big belly and a double chin. Like, I want Barbie that looks like me. I really do. I would love that. And not as a joke and not as an insult, but as a genuine representation of the type of woman I am. It falls flat. That said, I still really appreciated the level of diversity that was present in the casting. This is another one of my likes. I loved the way that diversity was shown without being over-explained. Like, I liked the way that trans women and Black women and disabled women all shared the same space without having to explain their identities or be described as their marginalized identity, if that makes sense. That was something that was really refreshing for me about the Barbie movie, was the inclusion of, even though they were, beautiful, skinny, and tall women who, why did I say tall? I'm like embarrassed about being short. Give me a short Barbie, a Barbie who's like 5 foot, I feel like real Barbie is like 6'10", which is great. I love women who are 6'10". I would also like to have one Barbie who's like 5'1" and like 200 pounds, please. So even though those diverse characters were still very much like as close to the beauty standard as you can get, I still really appreciated the diversity of identity that was in place in the casting. Another critique I have, which kind of fits back into this story, is the performative activism. And I really I want to get into that for a second, because I think that this entire movie really was like a masterclass in performative diversity, performative allyship, and performative activism, especially because of the lack of class consciousness that there was in this film. And that was like probably my biggest issue with the movie, is that they were so ready to acknowledge white supremacy and colonialism and misogyny and patriarchy and rape culture in this movie. Yet I cannot think of one time that poverty was discussed, that wealth inequality was addressed, And I think that that's a huge issue. And that's where the movie, like, really, like, the performative activism, I could take or leave. You know what I mean? Like, it's a nice treat to me to see diverse women. And it didn't really do much for me to, like, change my experience. It could have been much more satisfying if there was any recognition as to why this performative activism was even necessary, other than living in a patriarchy. Like, I think the thing I agree with the most is that there was no address of capitalism and of the problems of capitalism. It was this huge loophole that was just completely left out of the movie. And I guess for me, it sort of reminds me a little bit of like the Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney controversy, or the Target Pride swimwear controversy, where it's like, okay, you're using images of queer and otherwise diverse people to market to queer and otherwise diverse people. And you also are doing nothing to make the lives of those queer and otherwise diverse people less difficult because of that identity characteristic that you are exploiting to make money, right? Like, I understand that this Barbie movie is the only Barbie movie that we would have gotten. I think it's a product of the capitalist landscape that even created a need for the Barbie movie in the first place, is continuing to produce capital, to sell concert tickets, to sell Barbie products, to sell literal Barbie dolls, and then to collab with every single brand that's ever been on Instagram to create this pink version of everything they sell. That's the point of the Barbie movie. The point of the Barbie movie is not diversity or inclusion or activism or upending the status quo. But the level of complexity that it takes to simultaneously market to a diverse audience, especially a queer audience, is something I can say I have lived experience with. To market to them without alienating them is really, really a fine and very complex and delicate line to walk that I think Barbie did extremely well. I don't think that it's all for good. I think that it's for a bottom line. I think that that makes a lot of the messages ring hollow. But of course, that is Barbie. Barbie is not here to upend the status quo. Barbie is here to help children who identify with womanhood and girlhood to see a place for themselves in the workforce. And that's really like what it is. And that's one of the reasons I love it. I like working for myself. Just the beauty of Barbie, like, that's what I have always been attracted to and drawn to in my work, and that's the kind of woman that I want to be. So, like, in a sense, I see Barbie as a utility for that reason. Barbie is a utility when it comes to being able to see ourselves as women, as pink people, as queer people in positions of capitalist power. And that's not necessarily always good. It's not always good. And it doesn't mean that women being in positions of capitalist power will make capitalism less harmful. But what I think it does do, which is the big, big pro, my favorite thing about the Barbie movie, aside from the musical numbers, but I think my favorite thing about the Barbie movie and what it did the most successfully and what I see as the most powerful result or manifestation of the Barbie movie is the way that it connected people, the way it brought people together in a collective consciousness, the way that a fandom does. I am no longer a fan of that particular author, but when I was a child, I was very much part of the Harry Potter fandom. No longer, but I remember the way that I felt connected to community, dressing up and going to movie premieres. And I really, really enjoyed the way the Barbie movie was able to bring that back for me. to connect me to other people who love pink, who love Barbie, who love femininity, glam, who love experimenting with identity, who love seeing what happens when they pretend and perform in a role that is attractive to them. I really like that. I really like pink. I really like full glam. And I think that that's, like, for whatever reason, something that Barbie brings people together on. And I think that's really powerful. I think that that can be harnessed in a way that isn't for the bottom line of Mattel. I think that bringing people together over a cultural touchstone that likely isn't completely unproblematic. I don't think any of us can sit here and say that much in life is unproblematic. And I think the Barbie movie and Barbie as a brand is a great example of that. She is problematic. She has issues. She has flaws. There's aspects of it that are disappointing. And I'm still a fan. I'm still a fan. I want to go see it again. I will probably buy more Barbies in my life. Do I think that that is completely ethically neutral? No. I honestly, I don't. I think that it's very, very similar to living in capitalism. There are risks every single day. Barbie itself has risk to children, to youth, when it comes to body image, and risks to the environment when it comes to mass production. And it is something that made people in my community, diverse members of my community, feel happy and also feel, from what I saw, safe to engage in. Like, the Barbie movie just has this kind of feeling of, like, inclusivity and safety that at least I witnessed and that I saw people in my community describe, to where even when there is a point that the movie falls flat, like in the ways that I described, another example that members of the Indigenous and Native communities have brought forward was the uncomfortable and, like, poorly written joke about smallpox, which I would recommend you Google if you haven't researched that to understand why that didn't land well. But even those conversations, the criticisms of the movie felt almost as safe to me as viewing the movie itself. Like, it just felt like we're all here to pay a little bit of money, to have some fun in costumes with some dance numbers, and, like, question what aspects of our identity bring us here. Why are we drawn to this? Why are we drawn to this concept of play and of making yourself into a new person, into a new character, into a new doll through your relationship to cultural and, like, literal pieces of our world, if that makes sense. I think that there's a lot when it comes to, like, fragmentation and projection that makes Barbie so fun, and that also makes the movie so fascinating from, like, a metaphysical standpoint. It's so interesting how the movie explored the way the doll has been impacted by womanhood and then becomes, like, a projection for womanhood in due course. And I think that that movie was almost like a little microcosmic example of the experience of being projected upon and projecting upon somebody larger than life, like on the big screen. Like, the way that I may be projecting on you right now and you might be projecting onto me as well. I think that that's really electric and full of life and full of life force energy, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I think that it can be used to exploit people. And I think it can be used to exploit the earth. And I think it can also be used to bring people of similar identities, especially marginalized identity, together to celebrate, to have fun, to play, to share their favorite pieces of life with each other. And that is what I think that we can take away from the Barbie movie, is the way that we can still show up in capitalism, like, if anything, that's one way I'll give props to Mattel. They're like, well, what are we going to do with the Barbie brand? Let's bring a bunch of culture into it. Let's connect to musicians. Let's connect to artists. Let's connect to designers. And let's reinvigorate this archaic idea as a dynamic modern cultural touch point, and let's make the people have fun, because they're a toy company and they want to make money, and so they're going to make people have fun. And so if anything, it's like, cool, I like having fun, I like dressing up, I like going to the movies. And when it comes to spending my money, I tend to be more willing to spend my money on something that feels fun. We really are living in a time where there is a lot to be scared of, and a lot to feel frustrated and burnt down and burnt out and run down and suffocated by in capitalism, in our bodies, in our environment, in our social groups, in our culture. Like, there's so much pain and lack of support from the systems that extract their resources from us. It's like, it can be such a grind. And I think that as each year goes by, after 2020, 2018, 2008, et cetera, for many of us, the ability to feel free and to feel expressive and to feel creative feels less and less available. And one thing Barbie Movie did is it made that type of creativity and fun and self-expression feel available and like friendly and approachable and nice and kind. And that is something that I appreciate. I think that I am a person who I know that I am a person who is, to my own detriment and benefit, an optimist. Being optimistic is not always a good thing. It can cause overcommitment and can cause refusing to acknowledge when things aren't working, right? But as an optimist, I saw the optimism in the Barbie movie. The optimism for a future. And not just a future, but like a dynamic present that can be changed, right? Like the meaning of our pasts and what has brought us to this point, like, are these moving pieces, like these doll parts that we can use and arrange and give new meaning to and continue forward and to develop new relationships and to change relationships and to grow our understanding of who we are. And that's really cool, because it's like, I know that I'm somebody who, even though I have, such a public platform, and even though I have been on the internet for a very long time, and even though I consider myself to be fairly visible, I'm someone who still gets really scared to express myself, really afraid of not being enough or not being right or failing, which is another theme that I really, really enjoyed the exploration of in the Barbie movie, is this idea of failing as not an ending, but as a landing, if that makes sense. Like, failure isn't the end of the movie. Failure isn't the end of a creative process or of an interest or of a relationship. Failure is the opportunity to innovate, to do something new, to fill that space up with something else. And I love that. I really do. I think that was one of my favorite takeaways from the movie itself, from the plotline itself, was this idea of like giving up on what we set out to do in the first place and trying something completely different, or trying something easier, even trying something that feels more natural. And I think that I'm even somebody who's afraid to share my current most true self. And for whatever reason, the release of the Barbie movie made me feel like I was really in a place where I could share and be honest about exactly how I feel and what's up for me right now. And so that's kind of what I did in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear what you thought about the Barbie movie. Is there anything that I missed? Is there anything that my analysis lacks when it comes to context or influences or cultural literacy? I would love to know. Please contact me at my new email address. My old one still works. It was broken for a few weeks, but it works now. But my new email address is morgan@morganlefay.com. It's spelled a little weird, so check it out in the show notes for this episode, or I guess in the description down below if you're watching the video. And thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you as a huge Barbie fan. I will talk to you later. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Whorrific Podcast. If you like Whorrific and want to support my work, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a rating and review on whichever platform you are listening. If you would like to get in touch with me, my Instagram, email, and website are linked in the show notes. Take care and stay horrified.